Now, the best way to get a feel for the 3000's capacity and configuration possibilities is by turning the processor around and looking at the connections on the rear panel. So you can see here that this row of connectors is for inputs 1 through 16. This row right underneath it is for inputs 17 through 32. Down here is for outputs 1 through 16. This area is where you're going to connect external DDRs and VTRs, anything which requires machine control. There are 4 of these RS422 ports. Don't worry about what kind of protocol it uses. Those are going to get set in the menu later on. Over here is where you're going to connect your 2 power supplies. There's an A and a B. The switcher only requires 1 power supply to actually run. The other is a redundant backup. But it's important to have both of them on and plugged in all the time. Down here is the reference area. Now, this is going to either use Blackburst or tri-level sync. Most people use Blackburst, and we'll touch on that in a little bit when we get into the menu section. There's a loop through for your reference if you want to send the reference somewhere else. If you're not going to loop the reference, please use the 75 ohm terminating resistor that comes in the box. And lastly, right here is the single LAN connection. This is the one marked MVS. It's a Cat5e Ethernet cable, and it's going to run from here over to the MVS 3000 panel. Now, these are Gig-E Ethernet ports, so there's no need to have a special crossover cable or a crossover adapter. It'll automatically happen when you connect them. On the control panel side, the connections are pretty simple. Here's the LAN cable connection marked MVS. Now, this is going to go back to the chassis, which was also marked MVS. Here is a DVI-D connector that's going to go to your touchscreen monitor. And right next to it are 4 USB connectors. Now, one of those is going to be used for the touchscreen monitor, so you're going to connect that up. And the others are used for things like hard drives or USB thumb drives to save files offline outside of the switcher and take it with you somewhere. And of course, it helps to plug in the power cords. Now, be sure to do both power cords, otherwise you'll miss the point of having a main and a backup power supply. That's it. That's all it takes to connect the MVS 3000. Now, in this demonstration, we're using an off-the-shelf third-party touchscreen monitor, but you can also use Sony's ICP6511 dedicated menu panel. We'll see that a little later when we take a look at the 6500 series. Now that we've got the hardware all plugged in and set, let's take a look at what you need to do to get the whole system up and running. Now, we're going to start by turning on the power. On the processor, it's these 2 switches. Again, make sure they're both turned on for a main and a backup. Now, over here on the panel, we're going to press this button right here. Now, you hold this for a couple of seconds and wait for the system to come on. You'll see both power supply lights turn on if you have both connected. Now, when the panel comes up or you load a new setup file, you're going to see 2 words around each fader bar, and that is non-sync right here and right here. And don't get worried, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with your video signals. The switcher's just trying to tell you that when it booted, it doesn't know if the physical position of the fader arm matches the electrical position of the fader arm. For instance, the fader on ME1 came up physically in the middle, but probably is electrically at the end. So what we do is we just exercise it a couple times. We'll do the same thing to this. And now the switcher knows that the physical location and the electrical location of the faders match. Now we're going to take a look at the touchscreen menu. In the upper left-hand corner, you'll see this button up here that says page, and it's right now it says 1411. We'll talk about what that means a little bit later. If you press this, what you're going to get is the top menu buttons. So you can see here we have home, which will take you back here. We have ME1, program preset, etc., etc. Another important button over here on the right-hand side is called shutdown. If I hit the shutdown button, this is going to turn off the power to the control panel and shut down the operating system in an orderly fashion. So if I was to say yes right now, I would turn the panel off. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to say no.